You are building an interactive web application that requires swiping and other dynamic functionality. How can you achieve this? How do we get dynamic functionality in our web applications? That was quick, guys. Okay, yeah, the correct answer is JavaScript. Need to be patient. A lot of you answered very quickly. Remember, HTML just does templating. HTML is just for creating templates. Oh, unlucky, unlucky. But yeah, HTML. Okay, you tapped the wrong one. Oh, that's unfortunate. Don't worry. There's some time to make up the points, I think. But yeah, JavaScript. Yeah, you guys know this. That's what we use for the interactivity. HTML will just provide a template. The other two are tricks. Okay, the other two are just tricks. You wouldn't want to do it server side because that would mean that you have to communicate with your C# server too much, and Adobe Flash is just a trick one. Yeah, cool. Onwards and upwards. Question 2 of 5. You want to display a message when JavaScript is not supported in the user's browser. Which HTML tag can do this? So we just want to display a little like error message when it's not available. Okay, again, 2 out of 3, interesting. So the error tag, I just put there, it's a tricky, guys. The error tag doesn't exist. No script is the correct answer. I remember I explained it very briefly and then we moved on. So yeah, this was a very brief thing at the beginning of our lecture on JavaScript. And yeah, the script tag obviously requires JavaScript. That's where we put our JavaScript. And the link tag, let's not even talk about the link tag yet, okay? Question 3 of 5, let's go. Which attributes in the HTML link tag points to the .css file you want to support? Yeah, I was like, there's no way there's an error tag, yeah. Yeah, there isn't. Which attribute in the HTML link tag points to the .css file you want to support? So which attribute? You're not feeling this one. Yeah, this one's a bit tricky, I'd say, but I did mention it a lot. I mentioned this a lot in last week's lecture. Okay, I guess it was a bit tricky because it was one in 3 got it. Okay. So one person said script. Remember, script is not an attribute, script is a tag. So script is where we put our JavaScript. Rel, we type style sheet. Okay, we say rel equals style sheet, something like that. Oh, I see someone else has joined. Welcome, Tariq. Let me just mark you on the register quick. We're just moving through the quiz for today. But this is nice. See, it's important that Tariq attends. Krefler, you were asking about attendance earlier. It's important that Tariq attends because he appears twice on the register. So he counts as 2 people, which is great for the attendance numbers. Anyway, so the script tag is where we put our JavaScript. Rel, we set equal to style sheet. So that's telling the link tag that it's a style sheet. href is what we point to the CSS file. Why? Because CSS is a type of hypertext and href is hypertext reference. Okay, on to the next question. Question 4 of 5. You want to perform mathematical operations and comparisons while minimizing communication with the server. How can this be done? We want to minimize communication with the server, but we need this like complex stuff. We need to do this complex stuff. How do we do it? Not bad, guys. Okay, cool. So what do we have to think about here? So there were 2 options in the middle. I'm glad no one said those. So client-side C#, server-side C#. Neither of those would be correct, okay? Because obviously the client can't run C#. Our servers can run C#, okay? Our servers can run C#. But we don't. Why wouldn't we want to use the server's C# to do this complex mathematical operations? You can see in the question, it says minimizing communication with the server. We want to minimize communication with the server. So server-side C# is not the correct answer. Client-side C#, the client can't run C# at all. Client-side JavaScript, that's correct. That's how we do this kind of complex functionality, and that's actually what we were programming at the end of last week's lecture. Server-side JavaScript, remember, as far as the MTA is concerned, as far as the MTA is concerned, there is no server-side JavaScript. Okay, we know today that there is such a thing as server-side JavaScript, but as far as the MTA is concerned, it doesn't exist. Okay, so don't. And also, even if it did exist, as far as the MTA was concerned, that would still be the wrong answer because it says minimizing communication with the server. So the way to do that is client-side JavaScript. Okay, guys. Cool. On to the next question and the last question. So that hopefully answers your question, Dape. We're here for another 60 seconds or so. You wrote a lot of CSS code for your web page. You want to take advantage of caching and be able to edit the CSS easily. How can this be done? So we want to take advantage of some caching. But yeah, we have lots of CSS. So how do we handle this problem? Yo, you guys quick drawed on that. Okay, again, majority got it, so that's very cool. So let's see, I'm glad none of you fell for putting it in the head tag, it seems. So use the style tag in the head tag to hold the CSS. That would be wrong because that couldn't take advantage of caching. We'll discuss this a little bit more today, very briefly. Script tag with the source attribute. If we were importing a JavaScript file, we would use the script tag with the source attributes, and we'll see that today. I'll remind you of it now, Dape, because we'll see it in the code again. Use the link tag with the source attribute. Okay, so the source attribute would be used for something that is not hypertext. For CSS, we use the href attribute, as you saw in the previous question, actually. So this was like kind of a repetition almost of the previous question. Cool. So yeah, nicely done, guys. Seems to go well. Kreflo, I guess you pipped Taddy in this one. Only slightly, 4 right. That's quite hectic. It was like 60 points. GG. And yeah, nice. Everyone got at least one, so that's very cool. That's very cool. Because these ones were quite difficult because I had to really dig at the bottom of the barrel because we asked similar questions last week, right? Cool. So right now on my screen that you guys can see was the beautiful website that we were almost finished creating last week. Okay. So here's our gorgeous website. And I'll quickly reintroduce you guys to some of the important concepts in the HTML. We're going to finish off the website and move on to the next part of chapter 4, right? Yeah. So cool. So I'm just hovering over to the code here. So this is what it looks like. We discussed a whole bunch of different HTML tags, right? The image tag. The image tag is what we use to display images that are available at public URLs on the internet. And we point to the images that we're displaying with the source attribute, right? So we use the source attribute to point to the image. Why are we using the source attribute to point to the image? Because images are not hypertext documents, right? Images are not hypertext documents. We also learned about the HTML tag, which we use to create hyperlinks. And we point to the thing that it's linking to. And you point to the thing that it's linking to using the href attribute. Why don't we use the source attribute here? Well, because now it's pointing to a hypertext document, right? A URL to another page. That's what a hyperlink will point to. So that'll use an href attribute, okay? So we learned about that. We also learned a lot about CSS, okay? So we learned how CSS is applied. Remember, the thing it sees first is the thing that applies. We also learned that we can put our CSS documents in another file, or all our CSS styling in another file, and import it using the HTML link tag. Once again, when using the HTML link tag to import some CSS, we're using the href attribute, the hypertext reference attribute. Why? Because CSS is hypertext, okay? Or at least a hypertext specification. Okay, so close enough. Yeah, and so we discussed all of this. It was sort of for the last 2 or even 3 lectures, I'm not sure. But last lecture, what we were working on was this little JavaScript function here. So using the script tag, we can put some JavaScript inside our HTML document, embed some JavaScript inside our HTML document. In this case, we're creating a function called add numbers, and functions work exactly the same as in C#, right? In C#, we call them methods more. In JavaScript, we call them functions. And we've got this function, and all it's doing currently is it's going to these. So if we look at the HTML document, we've got these two input fields here. We've got these two input fields here. Would I mind putting the code in the chat? Not at all. Let me do that quickly. There we go, all the code's in the chat. So that's not, the CSS code is not in the chat currently. The CSS code is not in the chat, but that's just styling. So it doesn't really matter too much. I tell you what, I'm gonna, can one of you type a message, like say hello or something, and I'll post the CSS code just below it. Yeet, cool, nice. There we go. So we got some CSS code there as well. So you've got all the code now that I have there. And the CSS must be in the same directory in a file called styles.css in order for it to work, okay? Anyway, so moving on. Styles.css, hey, styles with an S. Okay, so we've got this JavaScript function here, and all it's doing currently is it's going to these two input fields that we have over here, okay, these two input fields. And they're defined there. We've got input ID equals #1 and input ID equals #2. So it's almost like we've created variables for those input fields, and the variable names are #1 and #2. And in the JavaScript function, we say let num1 equal documents.getElementById. So search through the whole document and get the elements with the ID that has #1, and then dot value to get the value that's saved in that text box. Okay, the dot value will give us whatever text is in that text box. Now what we want to do is, what our goal here was, when you click this add button, okay, the add button, okay, add button, when you click the add button, we go to this add numbers method that we created because we set on click, the on click events to add numbers. And we just want to add num1 and num2, and we want to write the output to this paragraph that says results. Okay, we've got this p tag, PID equals result, and we just want to set results to whatever solution we get here, okay? And that's going to be super easy, guys. It's going to be one line. We're just going to say documents.getElementsById. Kind of, you know, Dappe, we're not going to be, you don't have to know JavaScript in detail. And in a way, I didn't have to teach it to you in this way. But I do want you guys to be able to create your own websites. But in terms of what you'll actually be tested on, really focus on what I focus on. Like when I was saying image tag source attribute, a tag href attribute, link tag href attribute. That's the kind of thing you'll be tested on. You don't have to know all of the details of JavaScript, okay, Dappe? So don't worry too much about learning every single detail. So I'm going to say document.getElementById results. Okay, so the ID is results. So that's going to get that paragraph tag over there. And then we're going to say inner HTML equals num1 plus num2. So .inner HTML will just set everything that's between the p tag, like the opening p tag and the closing p tag, will just be set to whatever's on the right here. Okay, and hopefully this will work now. I'm going to try it with 2 letters. Let's see. So I think I might have typed something incorrectly. Document.getElementById results.inner HTML. Let's see what's going on. Oh, I think I hadn't refreshed. Okay, I hadn't refreshed. Sorry about that, guys. So you can see I put AA and it added them together as you know, 2 A's. Okay, and whatever I type there, so I'm going to put this one will interest you. So I'm going to put 3 in one and put 3 in the other, and we get 3 plus 3, 33. Woohoo! It's not a fantastic calculator, but it's pretty close, eh? Pretty close. So what do you guys think the problem is here? So this will get us this will get us to understand what it's, yeah, exactly. Very quick maths. So I do want to ask you guys though, like what is going on here? That's not adding. Well, it is adding in a way, Taddy. It's just it's not adding the correct type. What is JavaScript reading from these two input fields? When it reads this 3, what is it reading it as? Yeah, it's reading them into variables. It's reading them into variables, but you guys know more than that from C#. From what you know from C#, what is JavaScript doing here? What is it reading that 3 as? What type? Strings, exactly. Yeah, they're strings. They're strings. They're strings. So it's just reading in strings. JavaScript is reading them as strings. It's not treating them as numbers. It's the same as if you guys remember way back in chapter 1, we said dog plus cat, right? We were talking about how C# defines addition. And when you go 5 plus 5, it's perfectly sensible how you define addition. But numbers aren't the only thing we can use these computers for, right? We can also hold like strings. And when you add dog and cat, it gives you dog cat, right? So yeah, in order to tell JavaScript that we're talking about strings here, you just say parse int, okay, like that. Parse int. It's similar to the console, or remember convert.toInt32 in C#. This is similar to that convert.toInt32. We just say parse int, and then when I hit add now, okay, I'm gonna have to refresh, obviously. I'm gonna say 2, and it now gives me 4, okay, because it sees that these are numbers now. Okay, and yeah, that's it. That's it for our JavaScript calculator. There's just one more thing we have to discuss, and then we're done with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And remember, Dape, I know it's quite hectic because you are seeing like new languages now and stuff. But remember, we're just discussing the front end here. The rest of this lecture will be back to C#, server-side C#. So yeah, exactly. So it does create a weird problem, Taddy. So I'll show you something. I'm going to change it to division. Okay, I'm going to change it to division. Wait, what? No. I'll discuss more. I do want to. We need to focus a bit. I'll mention it more when we get to it. So let's just finish this last thing. So you can see now I've said num1 like times num2 or something like that. I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna refresh here. Now when I go 8 times 2, you can see it doesn't. Okay, so with multiplication it works. Let's try num1 divided by num2. Okay, cool. Yeah, so you can go ahead and create like a whole calculator like this, which is great. So yeah, you have to pass it into an integer precisely. It was broken at first. I'm not sure. It's confusing. So the reason, so JavaScript is annoying because it doesn't have a strict typing. It doesn't have strict typing, Taddy. So it doesn't have types strictly the same way C# does. You see here, we just say let num1, and JavaScript just decides on the type. So yeah, it is a bit annoying, but hey, it works for some things. And one thing that's really nice, it's the last thing I'll show, and then we must continue with so I'm going to say plus now. So I'm changing it back to doing addition. I'm going to hit refresh, and then I'm going to say 8, 2. So what happens if I try to add a and a? JavaScript will automatically handle the error, and it prints out nan. Nan stands for not a number, not a number. So JavaScript also automatically handles that. But now, the last thing we have to discuss is, you see we have this script.js file. Just like with styles.css, where we moved all our CSS code into this .css file in order to take advantage of caching, and I'll explain that again just now after we do it with the JavaScript. We can also move the JavaScript into that other file. So we've got a scripts.js file that's currently empty. I'm just going to take this exact JavaScript function. So the exact JavaScript function, I'm going to paste it in scripts.js. Script.js. And we're going to import the JavaScript file using the script tag. So inside the script tag, I'm going to use a specific attribute. I'll tell you now. The attribute I'll use is either source or href. Which one do you think I'll be using? You think I'll be using href? Is JavaScript a form of hypertext, Taddy? Source. Okay, great stuff. Yes. So we'll be using source. The reason we're using source is because JavaScript is not hypertext. Okay, that's the easy way to remember it. Okay, and that's it actually. So our code will still work now. We're just importing from a separate JavaScript file. Okay. Ooh, I must just make sure that it's fetching everything. Script, is it scripts.js or script.js? Oh, it's script.js for me. Not scripts.js, it's script.js. There we go. So that's why I wasn't importing at first. And now it'll work. So I'll try to add a to 2 and it gives me not a number. So href is for CSS and source is for JS. Yes, precisely, Tari. And yeah, dape. So these are the important things to remember. That's the kind of thing you'll be asked about. When using the image tag to import an image, we use the source attribute. Why? Because images are not hypertext documents. When using the a tag to point to another URL, we use the href attribute because it's pointing to a URL of a hypertext document, okay? So a hypertext reference. When using the link tag to import CSS, we use the href attribute. And when using the script tag to import JS, we use the source attribute. Once again, because CSS is a hypertext specification, but JS is not hypertext, okay? And that's the important stuff to remember. All of this other stuff I showed you because I want you guys to be able to make websites. But if you would just want to pass that multiple choice stuff, the important stuff to remember is what I just said, okay? The other important thing to remember is that the CSS that it sees first, the CSS that it sees first is the CSS that's applied first. And remember, we did some examples with the font and the font color and the background color where whatever background color or font size or whatever it sees last is the one that's applied, okay? So that's the other. It cascades down through the document. So read the document from top left to bottom, and whatever CSS you see first will be overwritten by the CSS you see last. So the last CSS is what applies, okay? So that's the important stuff to remember, guys. But I just showed you this. The reason I showed you this, and I'll remind you, is due to that, like the YouTube tutorial, right? The YouTube tutorial. You guys can set up, I've posted a YouTube tutorial, and you guys, if you follow that tutorial, you'll be able to set up your own website that you can edit in this way. Tari, you did yours the other day, right? Can you send us the URL to it so that we can check it out? Cool. Yeah, no problem. And that's actually it. So that's it for the web page development. We've got HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so that's it for that bit. The next part of chapter 4 is on ASP.NET development. So this is server-side development. Actually, I can show you this one last thing, just so that it makes perfect sense for you guys. So when I import this document, so when I open this document in my browser, no, it's no problem. It's no problem. It's cool that you've got it done anyway. If I go to sources, you guys can see that it's importing the 3 files, right? mypage.html, scripts.js, and styles.css. If one of these files changes, let's say I change mypage.html, if one of them is changed by the server, for example, I would only have to re-download that page. I wouldn't have to change .js or .css, right? I wouldn't have to re-download them because they didn't change. And so this is what we mean by caching, local storage. So this stuff is stored locally. Ah, nice, cool. I'll open it over here. Oh, sick. Oh, this is cool, dude. Nice. My name is Taddy. I go by Teeny Taddy. I'm a gaming tag and socials. I play Call of Duty, Warzone, Fortnite, Minecraft, Hyperspace, and many more. I'm an aspiring streamer YouTuber with 100. Jeez, this is cool, Taddy. This is cool. Nicely done, dude. I dig it. I dig it. I dig it. I dig it. Cool. Yeah. So, guys, if you want to, everything being censored will help a little bit on mobile, but yeah, it can. Things can go crazy a little bit. But no, this is cool, dude. And obviously you've already got it set up now. Still young. You have plenty of time to work this out. You have more YouTube subscribers than me. Unfair, dude. Unfair. Anyway, cool, nice. That's cool. That's very cool. Okay, onwards and upwards. All right, we are done with all of this stuff here, and we are going to move on to server-side development. I think I'm gonna switch over quickly to using my my desktop, and we're going to get through this super quickly. We might cover some practical stuff first about server-side development, just so that you guys can see before my load shedding starts. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my laptop screen. I'm going to start sharing my desktop screen. Okay, hello guys, can you... Ooh. All right, hello. Sorry, I had some echo there. Yeah, I'm going to subscribe to your YouTube channel now, Teddy. Let me just... Okay, I'll close this quick. Done. I'm subscribed. There we go. Let's get started now quickly. Ooh, why? No. Apparently the host has this. There we go. Okay. Okay, cool. I've got it. Share. Cool. There we go. I hope you guys can see my screen again. I'm just going to open up the chat quick. Cool. All right, guys. So I'm going to be working in Visual Studio throughout this. If you visit visualstudio.microsoft.com/vs, you'll be able to download it if you want to. You don't have to follow along with what I'm doing. Hopefully, do install it before we start Chapter 5 if you're on a Microsoft computer, or Windows computer rather. If you're not, then don't worry about it. It's not super serious, okay? Anyway, so yeah, that's the first thing. Next, I think let's just get immediately into this because I do want to, what's it for? You'll see so you're asking what Visual Studio is for. It's like a nicer place to use C#. It's a nice place to develop C#, nicer than Rex Tester. If you want to start deving C# properly, then you should probably use Visual Studio. Anyway, yeah, precisely. Yes, that's what's on your USB, precisely. But it's available for free online as well, the community edition of Visual Studio, and it works perfectly fine. Okay, so this week we are going to learn about ASP.NET developments. I'm going to be speeding through this, guys. So why are we learning this? So there are many different frameworks in the world, okay? We've learned how to develop web pages on the... we've learned how to develop the browser side, right? Hypertext documents. We've learned how to develop what the browser can process, but we haven't yet learned anything about server-side programming, the other side of web development. So I logged in my PC. I'm just going to quickly resend the code on my phone. Resend the code. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's chill. Yeah, you can use, oh, right. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I get what you mean. Okay, cool. So we haven't yet learned about the server-side aspect of web developments, okay? Oh, but Creflo, start following this now, rather than, I'll tell you what, I'll zip up the document that we've programmed. I'll zip it up, and then you can just, and I'll post it on the WhatsApp group, okay? So you'll have all the code, but focus on the server-side stuff now. Okay, so .NET is a web framework. Okay, this is where frameworks fit into the picture. Okay, we've got this Venn diagram here. So we've got server-side developments and we've got client-side developments. In between, we have the idea of frameworks. They're what facilitate communication between the server and the client. Okay, if that's not making sense to you, don't worry. We'll see a lot of different ways of visualizing this. But it is that's a good start. Okay, so we've got this .NET framework. There are other frameworks like Node, well, kind of Node.js or Express.js, it's usually called. And we've got Django, Ruby on Rails. There are many different web frameworks to use. We're learning .NET, okay? ASP.NET is an infrastructure, so that'll work with C# or Visual Basic, okay? So we've got, but essentially we're learning the .NET framework or the ASP.NET framework, okay? And yeah, it's compatible with other languages as well, F# and Visual Basic, but we don't care about those two, okay? Can you copy the JS? I'll zip all of the code, Teddy, the JavaScript and everything else into that zip file. But for now, let's focus on the server-side development, because I do want to get through a lot of this. Cool. Okay, so we've got that. So why are we learning this? Okay, so we've got where I've established what ASP.NET is now. Why are we learning this? Well, this is the MTA, right? Microsoft Technology Associate. That explains why we were learning C#, because C# is kind of just Microsoft's version of Java, right? It's their answer to that. And we're now learning about web applications. And so naturally we would learn about ASP.NET, which is C#'s way of handling web applications, okay, or websites. Okay, so that explains why we're learning this. But yeah, it's time for just a brief revision of this idea of the clients and the server. We did discuss this a lot last week. So the client, that's you, okay? The client's your browser. You understand HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can request HTML, JavaScript, and CSS pages from the server. The server can do some stuff. Okay, the server does stuff, and it's specified in server-side scripting. Okay, server-side scripting. Now that server-side scripting is what we'll be learning today. After it's done that server-side scripting, it can deliver the results, and then you can do client-side scripting, okay, or like your JavaScript processing, your HTML processing, your CSS processing. Okay, the framework is what defines, the web framework is what defines what language the server runs and the format of communication between the clients and the server. All right, so that's what we're learning about today. These web frameworks, in particular, we're learning ASP.NET, and I explained why we're learning ASP.NET earlier. Okay, so hopefully that gives you guys some context. Some important things to remember. There are two main parts to the ASP.NET framework, okay, to the ASP.NET infrastructure rather, and to the .NET framework. The first is the system.web namespace. Now this is literally just a namespace, okay, and I don't want that to freak you out, so I'm just going to show you. We've worked with a lot of these. You see, we say using .system, .collections.generic, all of these things at the top. You can just say using system.web. Okay, you see it auto completes it. It knows what I'm talking about. System.web. It's just a namespace. Okay, it's just a bunch of classes and a bunch of properties, bunch of classes, bunch of interfaces. That deal with communication between browsers and servers. And we'll see some practical examples of how it's used. The main thing you have to remember, there are two main parts to the ASP.NET infrastructure. One of them is this system.web namespace. And you guys know what a namespace is. It's just a set of classes and interfaces, okay? And we've also got the ASP.NET worker process. So this ASP.NET_WP.exe. This is just a thing that runs on the server. So you can picture, like, if you're running a web server, you have to like run something to actually be able to use ASP.NET, right? There's an executable file that you click on, and that will actually run ASP.NET. So you can actually probably see a version of this on your computer, probably somewhere. It might be a little bit of a mission to find now. But yeah, somewhere there'll be like a little ASP.NET thing running that is doing some processing like this. But yeah, it's just one of these processes that permanently runs in the background and just handles all the ASP.NET stuff. Okay, so that's all the ASP.NET worker process is. So those are the two main parts of the ASP.NET infrastructure, okay? The system.web namespace and this little worker process that the server permanently runs that allows it to handle requests, okay, using ASP.NET. All right. The next important thing, okay, so that's your intro to ASP.NET, and I know I'm moving quickly. The next important thing is this page lifecycle. It's on page 97 of your textbooks, page 97 of your textbooks. They've got this horrible table there. I reformatted it in the slides to be a little bit nicer looking, and we're just going to jump right into this because I want to show you a quick practical example of the page lifecycle before my load shedding happens. WTF happened at clicks. I have no idea. I did see Julius Malema shouting about it or something on YouTube, but I haven't watched the video yet. But that's my entertainment for later. And yours too, Dape, you're distracting us. Let's focus on service, focus on service. Okay, cool. So we've got the ASP.NET page lifecycle. So we've learned, no, it's no problem. Well, it is a problem, but it's no, don't be worried about it. Cool, so we have, wait, let me just make sure one thing. Cool. Sorry, I was just making sure that I was recording. So we've learned about a life cycle before, right, guys? We learned about the life cycle at the beginning of chapter 3, the software development life cycle. Turns out programmers really like life cycles. So that's not the only life cycle that exists. The other life cycle that exists is the page life cycle, the page life cycle. So the page life cycle, as you could probably see on page 97 of your textbook, is long. There's 8 stages to this page life cycle, but they're fairly easy to remember and they flow into each other quite nicely, okay? So I've formatted them more nicely here, but it's very similar to the table you have in your book, okay? So yeah, we're covering the ASP.NET page lifecycle. Let me just provide some context first. So when a client makes a request to a server, okay, during this, when the client makes a request to the server and the server processes it, how does the server process this request? In the case of ASP.NET, it goes through what is called the ASP.NET page lifecycle, okay, the ASP.NET page lifecycle. Okay, there are a number of steps to this. We start with a request, okay? So we start with the user making a request to ASP.NET, okay? The first thing that's checked when a browser makes a request, and it's checked on the local computer and on the server itself, but I'll just explain it here. So I've opened up a website quickly. You can see when I open up the website like this, there are a whole bunch of files here. Okay, there are a whole bunch of files here. Like I can show you how many there are. Like you can see there's a whole bunch of images. So like this icon, the book icon, was fetched in a request. The GradCap icon was fetched in a request. The lock was fetched in a request. The banner up there, the banner in the top left, was fetched in a request. So every single little thing you see on the screen had a request associated with it. The CSS styling in the background, so like to style the documents a little bit. All of it was fetched in different requests, okay? So when you make a request, your browser will first check, hey, have I downloaded this lock before? Because if I have downloaded this lock before, when you hit refresh, I don't have to go and download it again. I've already downloaded it, okay? So it's saved in your cache. That's what we call cache memory. It's like local storage. Now you can imagine on the server, if it's getting millions of requests at a time, when it gets a new request, the first thing it checks is, has a similar request been made already? If it has, then I'm just going to serve it from my cache. I don't have to reprocess the entire request. I'm just going to serve the same response I served earlier. So at this request stage, it's quite simple. A request is made for a page. We check if a similar request or if the same request was made in cache. And if it's not, then we'll just continue with the life cycle as normal. Okay, so that's the first stage. Not too bad. After that, we want to start the life cycle. So after the request, we're going to start the life cycle. And where do we do that? We do it at the start stage, Okay, so the start stage involves determining whether the request is a postback or a new request. Okay, so now we have another question. What is a postback? What is a new request? Okay, in order to showcase this to you guys, I'm going to consider a login screen. Okay, when I requested this login screen for the first time, that's a new request. Okay, so that was not a postback, it's a new request. Okay, so that made a new request for everything. However, from the same page, I'm going to give it the wrong password and I'm going to hit sign in now. Okay, sign in. You can see it gave me back the same page, just with a little error message added in. Okay, that second request, after I hit sign in and it made a post, so what's called a post request, it made another request. Okay, it posted my email and the password to the server. So what's that called? That's called a postback. That request was a postback, okay? Because I was going from the exact same page, I was making a second request from the page that I had just requested. It was a postback. Okay?
So you guys now know what a postback is, and it's at the start stage where we set some page properties, and one of the page properties that we set is postback. Now I want to ask you guys, so this is all going to be C# code. Okay, I'm going to show you some of it now, but this is all going to be C# code. This is postback. So is postback, you can see at the bottom there, that's the name of a variable. Okay, I'm going to tell you what this variable does, and then I want you guys to tell me what its type is. What the is postback variable tells me is it answers a yes or no question. Basically, all the is postback variable is telling me is this request, okay, cool. Creflo has already got it. Dape, you already got it too, cool. Yeah, it's a Boolean, okay? That type is a Boolean, okay? Type is a Boolean. So is postback is a Boolean variable, 100%. So you guys already know quite a lot of what's going on here, all right? Cool, so we have the start stage, and now we've got the first thing that is quite important for us as developers, okay? Now, the stages of the life cycle, request, start, and the other stages, the other 6 stages that we're going to see after this, all of these stages are fixed, okay? Every time you make a request, assuming it wasn't served from cache, obviously, so we checked if it was in cache first, but every time a request goes through the life cycle, all of these stages, okay, there's one stage where there's a little bit of an exception that we'll get to, but basically the stages are fixed. You don't modify the stages themselves, okay? If you want to modify a stage, you link it to an event, okay? So some of the stages, like of the 8 stages, 5 of them fire off events. And on the start stage, we get our first event. It's called the pre-init event, pre-init event. Okay, the pre-init event. So I'm going to show you guys quick in Visual Studio how you attach something to an event, and then we'll come back to this, okay? The reason I'm showing you this before explaining the lifecycle in full is because my load shedding is going to start in 18 minutes, and I need to be able to show you this on my desktop. Okay, so we're just going to jump right into this. Okay, so I'm in Visual Studio. I hit Create New Project. So I'm going to hit ASP.NET Web Application C#, okay, because there is a Visual Basic version, but I'm creating a C# version. I'm going to click that. I'm going to call it Web Application. That seems fine. I'm going to call it Chapter 04 is the solution that I'm going to give my solution name. You could also just place it in the same name. Ah, that's unlucky. At least you've already gotten through the first hour of the lecture by then, so maybe you'll be able to catch up on YouTube, perhaps. Cool, I'm just going to save it into a folder called Workspace on my desktop. You could save it wherever you wanted if you were following along in Visual Studio after the lecture, okay? I'm just going to hit Create. This is going to go ahead and create a ASP.NET Web Application. I'm going to select Empty, okay? Empty, and just hit Create. Cool. So that's going to go ahead and create a project. It's going to take a little bit of time because it's got a lot of files to create. And yeah, while it's doing this, let's discuss the pre-init event. So we fire off all of these events at certain stages of the page lifecycle, okay? And each event has, you could picture a particular purpose. So if you want to modify something before initialization stage, before the page and all of the controls on the page are initialized, then you will attach it to the pre-init event. So this, if you want to modify page properties, like what the type of the request is, what the type of the response is, if maybe whenever you get a post back, you just want to manually set is post back to false to make, like, I don't know, post backs impossible or something for some reason. In general, the pre-init events, you won't use it much, but it's important to know that it exists, okay? So yeah, the pre-init event you'll use to set page properties, okay? So if you asked at what event would you set page properties, you would say the pre-init event because nothing is initialized yet. What is pre-init? Init stands for initialized. So pre-init is pre-initialization. So as you could probably predict, the next stage is the initialization stage. So you see, guys, there's a flow here. There's a request. We then start the page lifecycle. We fire off the pre-init event, the pre-initialization, and then we flow into the initialization stage. Okay, there's somewhat of a flow going on. Cool. So the project finished creating, so that's fantastic. I'm going to go on to the project. So I'm in Web Application 1 now. I'm just going to quickly go ahead and add a web form to this project. So I'm going to scroll down, hit Add, New Item. and web form, and I'm just going to click add. And this is going to generate a whole bunch of random nonsense for us. So it's also going to take a little bit of a while. Yeah, cool, it's done. Okay, that didn't take nearly as long as I have. Now, guys, what do I have here? What is this document? Do you guys recognize this? What is this code over here? Let me see. I can't zoom in too much, unfortunately. But do you guys recognize this? Exactly, it's HTML. Now, it's in a file called .aspx. And all that means is that this is HTML code that can be processed by an ASP.NET server. Okay, but other than that, it's exactly what you've learned. Okay, it's just a HTML document. Okay. Behind this HTML document, we've got this here, web form 1. So you can see it's got the same name. Our HTML is in this web form 1.aspx. Okay, so that's ASP. Okay, and we've got behind this document, we've got a web form 1.aspx.cs. Okay, so this is .cs, that's C# code. This is C# code, and you guys should recognize this. This is a class called web form 1. That was the name of my app, if you guys remember. It inherits, okay, you guys know what that is, inherits from system.web.ui.page, okay, .page. And yeah, so, and it's got, so this is a class, and it's got a method inside it called page load. Okay, and cool. So we're not going to use page load yet, but this is how you link to events, guys. So in order to link to the pre-init event, you'll create a method like this, protected void page underscore pre-init. Okay, pre-init. And the events will have a delegate, as we discussed in chapter 2. So it needs to look in a certain way. The event needs to look like this. It needs to return void, and it needs to take in 2 parameters. All of the C# code is bringing back some memories when I was struggling with inheritance. Okay, cool, cool. Don't worry, it won't be, I think this one is where it'll start coming together, I think. Now, look, so immediately so I've told you now, this is how we link to a specific event, okay? This is how we link to a specific event. You can see pre-init is the name of the event, okay? Pre-init is the name of the event, pre-init. Okay, that's the name of the event that we're linking to currently. And that's, so, and you guys can see that in the stages of the application lifecycle, that's the name of the event. Okay, but now hopefully you guys remember from chapter 2 when we discussed events, how did we link to an event? We had to say something like events. Okay, sorry, that was just ASP.NET, Visual Studio auto-completing for me. We had to say something like the event's name plus equals the method that we want to add to it, right? We had to say something like that, right? Event plus equals method. It was something like that. Why didn't I have to do it that way this time? This is an important thing. Remember, guys, they like asking this. In order to do it this way, so in order to not have to type out that whole plus equals thing, because it's a bit annoying, what you must set, you set auto event wire up to true. Okay, you see here we've got this flag, auto event wire up equals true. That is what allows us to do this. Okay, that's what allows us to do this. Okay, so we can link to events very easily by just setting the name of our method, because you guys know this is just the name of a method. It shouldn't do anything special. The reason why it does do something special is because this Boolean up here, auto event wire up, is set to true. Okay, that's why it's doing something special. That's why this is able to attach to a specific event. Okay, so I just wanted to explain that, and they like asking that. So if this is broken for some reason, if it can't find the event, it's probably because auto event wire up is not set to true. Okay, so that's the main thing. Now we can use this event. I want to perform some page processing during this event. So I'm going to say response. Okay, response is kind of like console, except this time it's writing to the page. It's writing to the HTML page, okay? So it's like response. And guys, how am I going to write to the page? You guys know some C#. I want to print something out on the page, guys. What command am I going to be using here? It'll look very similar to another one that we frequently use to write stuff out. I'll give it a string, Tuddy. 100%. Yeah. It'll be write. So I'm going to say response.write, similar to like write line. Okay, console.write. It's a similar idea. And I'm just going to print out or just write out from the pre-init event, from the pre-init event. Okay, cool. so that's just going to print out at the pre-init event stage. It's going to print out from the pre-init to the screen. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is right click and say build solution. So it's just going to compile the code and make sure that there's no errors. So you can see it says build started. It's translating all of the code into machine code so that the computer can understand it. It's processing everything. It's taking a little while and it's succeeded. Okay. Now I can go ahead and run this app. So I'm just going to say, I'm going to right click on webform1.aspx and I'm going to say view in browser, view in browser. And it's going to go ahead and open this up in Microsoft Edge. Okay. So it's just loading the page, contacting the server, which in this case is just my desktop, obviously. And it takes a little while, only because it's the first time. It's the first time the site is being opened, so everything will take a little while. And you can see it prints out from the pre-init event, Okay, so it worked. All right, guys, it worked. It makes sense that they use MS Edge because Microsoft made all of this stuff. You can change your default browser. I just haven't bothered to change it in Visual Studio. But yeah, you can see it printed out from the pre-init event. Okay, cool. So this method is running during the pre-init event. Okay, cool. So we can move on now. So we've done the start stage. We can attach, if we want something to run during the start stage, we attach it to the pre-init event. After pre-initialization, naturally, we move into initialization. At the initialization stage, all of the controls on the page are initialized and made available for you to get and set their properties. What do we mean by this? So guys, remember, we have this idea of classes, object-oriented programming. Everything is OOP, guys. Everything is OOP. So all of the buttons and stuff need to be initialized. And you guys know this, right? Like if I create a class like public class rectangle, something like that, in order to actually use the rectangle class, I have to initialize an object of type rectangle, right? I have to say rectangle rect equals new rectangle. Now it's the same for the server, okay? It's the same for the server. If you want a thing of type button, the button needs to initialize an object of type button, okay? Okay, it needs to do this, okay? Because it's using classes. So all of this initialization happens on the initialization stage. So if you want to execute any code, on the page before the controls are loaded. So if you want to execute code before the controls are loaded, then you can attach to the init stage, okay, the init stage. All right. So, or you could say before further page processing, okay? So if you're asked where would you put in an initialization thing, where would you run code before anything on the page is initialized? Then you would set it at the initialization stage, okay? And you'll attach it to the init event because that's where you attach. Okay, cheers, Dapper. Cheers, Dapper. Thank you for coming and hopefully see you next week. And hopefully there's no load shedding and stuff next week. Cool, so we can also go ahead and create a method that runs during the init event, okay? So I can say protected void page underscore init. Okay. Again, so I just use the name of the event, page underscore init, okay? And that'll automatically attach to the init stage. It needs to have the correct format, okay, like that. And then I can just say response.write from the init stage, from the init event, rather, from the init event. Okay, and that's how we attach something to the init event. All right. I'm just going to put a break. So I'm going to put a line break at the end of this. Okay, so I just added a line break over there. And cool. So I'm going to go ahead and build this again just to recompile. And you can see it's much faster this time. And then I'm just going to go ahead and open it up in the browser again, view in browser. Okay, and so you see it said from the pre-init event, from the init event. Okay, so each of these things is currently writing to the, by the way, that was at like 200% magnification. Okay, so from the pre-init event and from the init event. So you can see that's working how we expect it to work. Okay, So that's how I attach something to the init event. What would I attach to an init event? Any code that I want to have run before the page's properties are set. Yeah, well, HTML is meant, remember, so markup languages, Taddy, the reason they made markup languages is so that we would have a language that is easy for both humans and computers to read. So that was the whole idea behind markup languages, a language that's easy for both humans and computers. So like a middle ground, basically. Cool. So after the initialization stage, at the initialization stage, we fire off the init event. That's true too. C# can do a lot of extra stuff. Yeah, 100%. But you can see, I mean, like web dev is very powerful now. Like you can do some amazing stuff. But we'll discuss this during the break. My power's going to go off in like 4 minutes. So we've got the initialization stage, the init events. Okay, what do we attach to the init events? Any code that we want run before further page processing, before the controls are loaded. Okay, so all the controls have been initialized at the initialization stage. We can now load them into the page. So if the event is a post back, then okay, cool. So at this stage, we'll also check is post back. Remember, we set that is post back property at the start stage. So at any stage, if we want to find out if it's a post back, we can just check if is post back is true. If is post back is true, then it's a post back. So if it's a post back, then any changes are loaded here. And what do I mean by changes to the state? You can see here, if I hit hard refresh over here, let me actually go back and then go back to the login screen. So you can see we've got this. After I make a post back, there's going to be a change to the state. See that the email address and or password specified are not correct. That will be initialized at this load event as well, or like somewhat processed at this load event. It'll make more sense after we see the next stage as well. Okay, so any changes to the state are loaded here. So that is, when we say changes to the state, that'll also make sense after the next few slides, okay? But the main purpose of the load event is that is that the controls are loaded, okay? The controls of the page are loaded here, okay? So all of anything specific to the page or to the page's controls, you want to occur at the load event, okay? And if you want to attach something to the load event, you'll use exactly how we attach to the pre-init events and the init events. You'll just use page_load. So you can see I can go response.write from the load event, okay? Now notice, guys, remember, so you can see the order of these methods will not affect the order that the response is right. So I'm just gonna show you this quickly before my load shedding starts, which will probably be soon. So I'm gonna open this up in browser. You can see it goes from the pre-init event. Let me add a break line at the end of this line quickly. There we go. I must just, that's a bit annoying. Okay. View in browser, there we go. It's opening up again. Cool, so you see it says from the pre-init events, from the init events, from the load events, okay? You see it goes pre-init, init, load. So they're run in order of the events, of the stages of the page lifecycle. What's the arrow for load? What's the arrow for load? What do you mean arrow? The event. The event that's fired off is called page_load. The arrow. Yeah, just load. Yeah, page_load. Now the main thing, guys, is to say that if you want anything, if you want to do any code that's specific to the page's controls, okay, specific to the page's controls, then you'll do them at the load. Then you'll attach them to load events, okay? So if they ask you, we have some page-specific code or code specific to the page's controls, then you'll attach it to the load event, okay? That's where you'll want that to run, okay? And changes to the state are loaded here. You guys don't know what a state is yet, so that won't make sense, but we'll discuss it a bit later on the next slides. No, it's not before init. remember, so we're going left to right, Hadi. So request, starts, initialization, load. Oh yeah, in the code, exactly. So that's what I'm showing you. What I meant by that is you see the order of the methods here is irrelevant. Okay, the order of the methods is irrelevant. What matters is the order of the application of the page lifecycle. What matters is the order of the page lifecycle. So you see load happens after init. So the response is written to the screen after init. But yeah, good catch, Teddy. That's important to notice. So you can see it is happening in this order. It doesn't matter that in the code, the load method is technically before the init method, like it's higher up in the code. That doesn't matter because it still prints out from the load events afterwards, precisely, yeah. Cool. And just in case anyone didn't see that, let me just open it up. It's okay now if we switch to my laptop, so load shedding can start. Cool. So after the load event, we have the postback event. The postback event is just for postbacks. So you could picture something like validation would happen here. So like when I hit sign in on this postback, so I just did a postback and I'm going to do another postback now. When I click sign in, it has to validate my password. That process of validating my password would occur at this postback stage. Okay, that is not something you're going to be editing. Okay, it's not going to be something you edit. And you can also set the is valid property here to true. So that is literally just testing, is something valid, is any particular thing valid. Okay. So the computer knows to print a init before load because the page underscore init and page. No. So it knows that because these events are fired off in the correct order. The start stage fires off the pre-init event. Next comes the initialization stage, which fires off the init event. Next comes the load stage, which fires off the load event. That's why it knows the correct order. Okay. So it knows because the events are fired off in the correct order. The ordering of the methods has nothing to do with the order of the way that they're running. I could put pre-init last. I could put it first. It doesn't matter. Pre-init will always come first because that event happens before the rest. Okay. So that's the main thing to get there. Cool. Okay, cool. So we've now gone through the request. Okay, so the page properties were set at the start stage. The controls were initialized at the initialization stage. The controls were like updated. Any attributes were updated at the load stage. Validation was handled at this postback stage. After that, we want to now actually render the page. Okay, remember guys, everything is happening still on the server. Absolutely all of this has been happening on the server. You wouldn't be able to see any of this, okay? What happens now is it gives you one last warning, okay? This is just them being friendly. They give you one last warning. There is the pre-rendering stage. So all this is saying is this is the last time you can change anything, okay? This is the last time you'll be able to change anything because the page is about to be rendered and finalized, okay? And if you want to do anything, like make any final changes to the request, you can do so at this pre-render event, okay? So there is a page underscore pre-render, okay? So I'll link something to it now just to show you that the ordering doesn't matter. I'm just gonna put it here. I'm gonna say page underscore pre-render. Page underscore pre-render, and I'm going to say from the pre-render events, and I'm just going to throw a break after the load events as well, a line break, just so that it prints on a new line. Okay, cool. And that's the last. This is the last one we'll see, I think, if load shedding allows us to. The load shedding starting late, it seems. View in browser, cool. So you can see it opens it up. Ooh, did I not wait for it to build? I don't think I waited for it to build. Let me just make sure that everything's typed correctly. It is, let me just, oh, page underscore pre-render. Whoops, so it wasn't typed correctly. That's why it didn't work. There we go, build. And I'm just gonna say view in browser quick. Now you can see it goes from the pre-init event, from the init event, from the load events, from the pre-render events. Okay, from the pre-render event. Again, the full stop was after the line break there. That's why I went to a new line. Let me just put the new line at the beginning. There we go. Cool. But yeah, that's working now. You see the pre-render event was last. It doesn't matter that pre-render, it doesn't matter about the order of the methods. You can see that pre-render comes last. Okay, it's the final thing. This is the last warning. You're able to change stuff at this last warning. Okay. Now, So that's at the pre-render event. So what's the next stage, guys? So the computer goes by init underscore. So the computer, yeah, page. So the computer knows to print init before load because page underscore init. Yes. So that's the name of the event, Tari. So remember how we would usually add to an event is we would say something like load, like if the name of the event was called onloaded, okay, we would have to say plus equals page underscore load. And that would add this method to that event, okay? So that would add this method to the event. But the computer is doing that for us automatically, okay, because of the names of these methods and how it knows to add the page underscore load event to the page underscore load method to the loaded event, or just to the load event in the life cycle. The reason it knows how to do that is because auto event wire up is set to true. So it's adding to all of these events automatically. And yes, correct. So it's adding these methods to the appropriate events automatically because auto event wire up is set to true. It's very important that auto event wire up is set to true. If it wasn't set to true, then none of these would run. If we set it to false, you'll see it'll break everything. Okay. So because then it won't automatically link these methods because these are just method names. These are just method names. They're nothing special. They won't automatically add to an event. If we want to add to the event, we have to say plus equals. But because auto event wire up was set to true, so you see now nothing printed to the screen. When I hit view in browser now, it doesn't print out anything because auto event wire up is not set to true. So it doesn't automatically add to those events. It doesn't automatically add to those events anymore. Okay. But once I set it to true, it then automatically links those methods to the appropriate events based on their name. And you're correct, it's the underscore load, underscore init, underscore pre-render. Well, the full thing, page underscore pre-render, will link to the page's pre-render events, okay, automatically because auto event wire up is true. And you're correct, the next stage is render, okay, or the rendering stage rather. So we had pre-rendering stage, that fired off the pre-render events, and next is the rendering stage. And yeah, so this is where the response is finalized. The page is finalized. The HTML document that is sent back to the user is finalized, okay? I can show you this as well. So I'm gonna say view in browser. So when I say inspect, or I should say view page source maybe, you can see in the body, all it did was add the strings that I put in, right? You can see this is a very standard HTML document. So at the render stage, it finalized this. It set all of these properties, okay? That's what it did at the rendering stage. It set all of these, it set this page, it put it all together, it finalized it, okay? Or rather, so obviously these were written to the response at their respective events, but you can imagine if there were like controls on the page that had to be loaded into the body, like this for method post, all of those kinds of changes, they all need to be loaded at once. And so that happens at the render stage, okay? The response, that response HTML documents is populated, it is finalized, okay? But remember, all of this for now has been happening on the server. So we went through the whole life cycle. We're at render, the response is finalized, all the controls are set, and then lastly, we head on to unload, okay? The unload stage is where we send the final response to the client and we clean up everything. The response is deleted because it's handled now. Response is deleted, and any further cleanup can be attached to the unload event. So like if you need to close any database connections, if you need to, I don't know, if you were running some kind of complicated encryption algorithm and you need to clear your memory, all of that kind of thing can happen at the unload stage, and you can link it to the unload event. Okay, now I want to show you something interesting because so the example we just went through is very similar to the example on page 98, but there is one thing that they don't show that I do want to show you guys, and hopefully I can get through it in the next like 5 seconds, just in case load shedding starts. So I'm going to link something to the unload event, okay? Object, sender, event, args, E. So I'm linking something to the unload event. Now I'm going to try printing out the response, okay? So I'm going to say response.write. I'm just going to print out unload. I'm just going to keep it simple so that we can do this quickly because my load shedding is literally going to start any second now, unless I'm being lied to. So I'm going to hit build. I'm going to run the response. So I'm going to say view in browser. Now let's see what happens. It gives me this horrible error. What does it say? Response.write unload. Response is not available in this context. So I'm not allowed to use the response.write inside page_unload, which makes sense, right? It's very intuitive. The response has already been sent back to the user when we get to this part of the code, right? When the unload event is fired off, this page_unload, when unload is fired off, when that event is run, the response is gone. It's been deleted. It's already been sent back to the user. Okay, so I can't write to the response at the unload event because the response is gone. Yeah, exactly. Well, because response is just gone. You can't edit the response anymore. It's no longer on the server. It's been sent back to the user, right? The last time you could edit anything about the response was in the pre-render stage. Okay, remember, that was your final warning. The final warning was the pre-render stage and the pre-render event. Like if you wanted to do any final changes, you could link it to the pre-render event. But by the time you get to the unload event, you can't make any more changes. The response is already sent back to the user, and you can see that literally because response is no longer accessible in the unload event. It's gone. Okay, cool. So that's the page lifecycle, guys. Pretty important part of chapter 4. So that's all they show you in the book. There is technically one other stage called the error stage. Like if anything goes wrong, you can just throw everything to the error stage. Okay. And it can like go like anywhere, can just throw to the error stage, okay? Which is kind of what happened here, actually, when I tried to use the response variable here in unload. Yeah, exactly, Taddy, you can't. Yeah, you can't. Because the response, your last chance is pre-render. Yeah, your last chance is pre-render. The unload stage can be used for things like closing the server's connection to the database or any of that kind of stuff, clearing up the server's memory. So you can see here it threw an error. How did it do this? It threw to the error stage, okay? It threw over to the error stage of the life cycle because I was trying to access response and unload. So it threw the whole stage to the error. Okay, so yeah, that's the page lifecycle. Hopefully it's not too bad. Important things to remember. If we want to make any changes to the page specific changes or changes to the page's controls, we add them to the load event. Any changes that you want to be made before the controls load or before further page processing, you can add to the init event. If you want to set page properties, then you can add it to the pre-init event. Your last chance to make changes is the pre-render event, and any cleanup or memory clearing or anything like that can be changed in the unload at the unload event. Okay, so those are the main things to remember about this. And yeah, and also remembering what a postback is, and remembering in order to use the page lifecycle events in this way, we have to be using, we have to have set auto event wire up to true. Okay, auto event wire up had to be set to true in order for us to be able to do all this stuff. Okay, cool. So that's that. The next thing, yeah. So we've learned about this page lifecycle now, but what we haven't really learned yet is how to actually embed code into this HTML document. I'm very confused about why load shedding has not started yet. Let me just double check my load shedding app. I am supposed to have load shedding now. Anyway, I don't know. Okay, yeah, don't question it. It might start now, but I'm gonna just continue on as if things are good. I'm sorry, I was gonna take a break when load shedding started. That's why I just kept going. I guess now it's a bit late to take a break since there's only 15 minutes of the lesson left. Do you guys mind if we just push through? I know it's a bit harsh, but I don't know. I think, okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I usually trust this app a lot. Cool. Okay, the next thing is very interesting though, is state management. So ASP.NET and all other frameworks can maintain a state for each web page that is being accessed, and also a set of web pages. But we'll discuss the distinction between that at the next lecture. The main thing is for now is figuring out what we mean by state, okay? The state is the current arrangement of values. So of all of like the variables, you could say, that you're storing about the website and controls on a web page. So what do I mean by that? I guess actually one good way of seeing it is to just say state define. So you can see that is the particular condition that someone or something is in at a specific time. So the state is the condition of the website or of the web application that we're considering at a specific time. That's all it is. And there are a number of different ways to maintain state, okay, to maintain this idea of state, the current condition of the website, okay? We'll go into more detail about them, but in broadly speaking, there are two categories of state management. There is client-side state management, and there is server-side state management. So some things that you might consider as a part of state. If you have a search field on Google, for example, what you're searching for might be a part of your state. So like when I Google define, state define, you can see here, it's got search underscore question mark Q. This is a type of state. This is my state on Google's website at the currently, or Google's web application. This is client-side state management because I'm the one using it. You could see if instead of saying state equals state plus define, if I said equals state and hit enter, you can see I'm now searching for state. If I said Q equals dog, you can see I'm now searching for dog. Okay, cool. So this is client-side state management because I, the client in my browser, am managing my state. Google is obviously managing a state for me as well. They have a state of like, I am currently logged into Google's server. So Google somewhere on their server has a little session ID for me. They're managing a bunch of things about my state as well. So there's server-side state management and client-side state management, and we're going to learn about them now. Okay. So there are a couple of different ways to do client-side state management. One of them you just saw, it's called a query string, okay? Key values can be passed around in the URL of a web page by using question mark character followed by a key. Any string can be stored in this way. Okay, so these are called query strings. What are they frequently used for? They're used to throw you forward often. So you can see there we have a question mark next equals library. So this is saying that the next URL I must visit will be library. So like if I click on library, I'm not allowed to go to the library until I log in. But how does it know that I was trying to access the library? Because of the query string, okay? So, but then other things like one you just saw was for searching. Like if I'm searching for something, I'm gonna hit the search button. You can see we've got a query string up here, Q equals Jane. If I change that to Lewis, then my search item will change to Lewis. If I change it to Grim, then my search item will change to Grim. Okay, so that's a query string. That's all a query string is. It just passes around. This is pretty much the easiest one. You can see it doesn't get much easier than this. It's just a string. It's just a string variable, basically. So yeah, probably the easiest one. Okay. Another very common one is cookies. Cookies. You guys have probably heard of cookies. So you can see that basically every single website you visit nowadays will have some number of cookies that are currently in use. So I'm just viewing mine here. So you can see I've got 3 cookies currently on this website, a CSRF token. So that's the token that manages my login. So that's how my browser knows my login details. So I don't have to re-log in every single time I open. It's stored a message. So this is just saying like it's site specific, obviously. The cookies that you have will change depending on the site, obviously. And there's also the session ID. So I don't currently have a session because I logged out. So I'm going to log in and we'll see how things change. Okay, well, actually, let me, you know what? I think I should, okay, cool. So I've now only got 2 cookies. Okay, I've got 2 cookies. I'm going to remove this cookie. Actually, let's remove that cookie as well. Okay, so I've got no cookies for the site currently. So you see it says cookies 0 in use. That is a lot. Yeah, that's a lot. But nowadays cookies are used for everything, for site personalization, like the color of text, the size of fonts, all of this weird stuff they use cookies for. Okay, but you see this site currently has 0 cookies because I removed them. I'm going to hit login. Okay, you see I've now got one cookie. What's this? CSRF token. Okay, this is just the site telling me I'm not logged in currently. I don't have a valid login detail. Okay, I'm going to hit login, sign in. Bam. Okay, I've now got 3 cookies. All right, I've got a message. What is the message doing on this side? Well, this is just saying, welcome, Joshua. How does it know my name, guys? How does it know that I'm Joshua? Because that's my username on the server. And in a cookie, that data was passed to me. That Joshua data was passed to me. Okay. We've also got a CSRF token, so that's all my login details, and a session ID. So this is the ID that uniquely identifies me on the server. So the server, if I give it this ID, then the server knows who it's talking to. Okay, so the server is maintaining a session for me. And obviously that session is in server-side state management, which we'll discuss in a little while, okay? So cool, that's cookies. Small packets of information stored by your browser on your computer. They're usually used to maintain login sessions, but also just personalize things a little bit, like this welcome Joshua message, that little personalization that would be handled by cookies usually, okay. Cool, another kind of session or state management is hidden fields, okay. Actually, you know what, it might be worthwhile to just switch to, actually, no, we can do this now. I'll just show you it, okay. So I'm gonna hit log out just to show you this briefly, because this one's a bit of a silly one, really. So I'm gonna hit view, I'm gonna hit inspect, actually inspect. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna find out where this is quick. So we're gonna do some editing. Cool, got that. Which one's this? Okay, cool. So this is this. So when you create an input field, you can do this anywhere. I'm just using this now because this is the site I have access to, okay? I'm gonna set the type equal to hidden. Okay, you can see it's gone now, right? It's gone. I can set it to text and it's there, all right? You can see what's going on here. So you can set certain fields to be hidden, which means the user can't see them unless they view page source, okay? Now, this might seem weird to you, but occasionally, especially historically, they don't use it much anymore because we now use cookies for all of this. But historically, people would frequently use these hidden fields to store data, to like store information. Because you can see, I can set the value of this field. You see it's hidden, so you can't see it currently. But the value of this field is still set to my email. You can see value equals 1407 at students.wits.ca. It's still set to my email address. So when I make it a text field again, when I make it visible, you can see my email address is still there. So I can use this to store data. I can use these hidden fields to store data. And that's all we mean by hidden fields. Hidden fields, they're not used much, but you can use them to store and pass around information on the clients, okay? Because you just have the hidden field. The user won't see it. It's not going to affect the look of the site, but you can use it to just hold a particular value. Okay. So that's hidden fields, another kind of client-side state management. And the last one is called the view state. I think the only way to show you guys this one will be to use a quick example, although actually I have a little GIF, so hopefully this will make it make sense. We can maybe do an example just before we start next week's lectures on web services, okay? So a view state will allow you to do something like this, okay? So you can see, you could also do this with a hidden field. In this case, this one was done with a view state. So you can see you enter a value, mirror, okay? Now you enter the value RAM. You clear the value, it's gone. Where's the RAM value? Hit display value, it's still saved there. So the way this is achieved is using the view state. Okay, so this can be used to maintain the states of controls in a single string. That's whatever. Okay, it works with the C# dictionary. I'm going to show you guys how the C# dictionary works. Actually, yeah, let's do that quickly because that's quite interesting. Actually, I'm going to do it in Rex Tester because I think that's best for this. Just need to sign in quickly. Sorry about that. Cool. So I'm in. I'm just going to show you guys this quickly. So the view state is maintained in what we call the dictionary. Okay, it's maintained in what we call the dictionary, and this will come up in next week's lecture as well. Let me just see. So I think it's dictionary dict equals new dictionary. Okay, so dictionary is just, again, I'm showing you this because dictionaries are very useful. And if any of you continue with computer science, you'll use them a lot. But they are actually just cool. They're like a special kind of array, okay? They're like a special kind of array. You'll see I'm going to specify 2 data types for this. Okay, so they're just another data structure, okay? They're just another data structure. But the difference with this kind of data structure is it's literally a dictionary, okay? You can literally use them to store a dictionary. So for example, I can say dict cat. So dictionary is the name of my, so dict is the name of my dictionary, okay? You see I specified 2 types, string, string. The reason I did that is because the reason it needs 2 types is because in this case, you give it the type of your index and the type of your data. So you'll see dictionaries are actually very cool. I'm just going to show you a quick thing. So we're going to say feline mammal. That's what a cat is. Okay, dict cat equals feline mammal. Let me just make sure that I'm using a correct. I guess not. Let me just see. A new expression requires. What am I doing wrong here? On line 15. I think is it in dot generic? I'm not sure. Let me just make sure. Oh, yes, you saw it, Taddy. Thank you. Thank you. Cool, it worked. Okay, thank you for spotting that, Taddy. I didn't see. Geesh, you're very on point. Cool. Great stuff. So you can see what this will do is I can access dict in position cat, and it'll give me feline mammal. And I can store in dict in position dog, I can store let's say canine mammal or domestic. I guess it should be like domestic canine mammal. Okay. Okay, something like that. And then this should be domestic feline mammal. Okay, so I don't know. It's not worth explaining to you in super detail because you won't really be tested on dictionaries, but it is quite a cool idea. Like you see, I can specify the type of the index. So just like when we have an array and we access it like array in position 0, it's just that now you can have your array in position cat, an array in position dog. You can change the type of your index. Okay. So it's like a pretty clever idea, I think, if you guys can see it. Yeah, that's why there's 2 strings. So you can see the type of so the first variable is the type of my key, and the second variable is the type of my, is the data that I'm storing in it. Okay, so I can have like char string, in which case I would access it like that, right? Something like that. Okay, hopefully that one works too. And it does, you see. So if I have char string, you can also use int string, in which case it's just basically exactly a normal array, right? Well, kind of, except it no longer necessarily starts at 0. You can start it where you want, okay? Ooh, I guess it doesn't allow ints for this. Oh no, it does. It's just I didn't change the second one to int. There we go. Yeah, so you see it's exactly the same now. Now you access it with numbers, but again, it doesn't have a start, okay? It obviously doesn't start. Yeah, I guess I did. Cool, but that's a dictionary. I don't know, we technically have 2 minutes left. Okay, so the view state is stored in a dictionary and view state. So we use the view state to store page specific information. So if you need to store any page specific information, you can use the view state. We have like 2 minutes left. I know I'm using all of your time here, but I want to introduce these 2 ideas at least. There's only 2 more and then we're done. Okay. Yeah, that is true. Okay, there's only 2 more things left. So I'm just going to keep you guys for like two more minutes, 1 minute each, because these are very easy, okay? Session state. So the session state is just the server maintaining a specific, it's almost like a cookie, except on the server, okay? A cookie on the server, that's what the session state is. Now, there's an important thing to grasp here. When the server is using it, so if you are being asked as a developer how to store personal information, you do not say cookie. Okay? You say session, because when a cookie is on the server, we call it a session. Okay? So like if you're asked, if you're programming a website where people need to view their like medical records, okay, their private medical records, how do you maintain a variable like across your website? How do you maintain a state for that particular user? Now, if you're asking the user how it's done, they would say cookie, because on their browser, it's a cookie. But when you're being asked by the MTA, you are being asked as a developer. And so you say session, okay, because you are programming the server. And on the server, these cookies are stored in the session state, okay? So yeah, that's the main thing. So if you're asked how we store personal information, private information that the user must be able to view across the website, then you say session state. You do not say cookie. This will come up a lot. I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about this, just so that you get the idea in your head. So we'll talk about it a lot. The last thing we're going to discuss today, and I promise, guys, this is it. I just want to finish AskNet today, is the application state, okay? The application state is the state of your entire application. So previously we've been talking how to store information for specific pages, like query strings and hidden fields and view states, how to store information for particular users, like cookies and session states. And now the last thing is, how do we store something for our website as a whole? Because there are things that we want we want to store specific information about some users, right? But we also want to know some things about our website as a whole. Like, for example, how many users are currently using the website? How many, if we have let's say we're managing a store and we're having a 30% site-wide discount, then that would be stored in the application state. Discount equals 30% or something, okay? So, and like how that works, it would be stored in a dictionary. So it would say something like, application state discount equals 30%. Something like that is what it would look like. Okay, but that's not the super relevant aspect. The point is the application state will store things that are needed across the application. So the number of users currently using the thing, or anything that's the same for all users. The number of views on a YouTube video might be an application state type thing. Okay. So that's the kind of thing we would keep in an application state. And that's actually it for this today, guys. I know I went a bit over time, and I know I didn't give you a break. I'm sorry, that was pretty harsh. I'll hopefully next week we don't have to think about all this load shedding stuff. But yeah, thank you for coming today, guys. And yeah, I'm glad I don't have load shedding at least. So that's cool. Yeah, Discord will use the application state for Discord. Is there a web version of Discord? Because remember, we are talking about websites here. Yeah, if you can think about it that way, definitely, Taddy. Yeah, 100%. But basically, every single website will be storing active users, and they're always going to be using the application state. But remember, anything that needs to be stored that isn't user specific, anything that is specific to the application as a whole, like the bank details of a specific person, you wouldn't store in the application state, obviously, because that's specific to the user. But anything that's site-wide discounts, a site-wide change to a specific field or something, that would all be, yeah, anything that isn't private, anything that's specific to the site or the application rather than specific to a user. Yeah, 100%. I think you get the idea, definitely. But yeah. Thank you for coming today, guys. Next week, we will have a break, even if there is load shedding. I'm glad we managed to finish this stuff, though. Yeah, and cool. And well done again on the website, Taddy. And yeah, the rest of you, do make a website, because it's worth doing. Question, I saw a YouTube vid where the title changes to how much views the vid has. So it's like, this vid has X amount of views. How does that work? Oh, I remember that YouTube video was posted by that weird redhead, right? That work, actually, you know what, Creflo, that is done using a thing called application programming interfaces and web services. And that is actually the topic of next week's lecture. So yeah, we'll be doing but basically you'll set up, there'll be a web service or API. There'll be an API that YouTube has set up that allows you to edit the name of your videos. And there's also another web service that allows you to request the number of views a video has. And you just need to link those two web services or those two APIs. So you'll have the API that updates the video after any given amount of time. Yeah, so the reason it would be related to timing, The reason it would be related to timing is because most APIs will have a maximum number of requests that you can make in a specific time. But we'll learn all about this next week. So yeah, make sure you come next week and then we'll learn about web services. Cool. Okay, great stuff. Yeah, cheers, guys. And yeah, see you next week. Bye-bye.